Fast Asleep with Gina Marie. We are here for a classic short story. Ooh, that makes us classic short story enthusiasts. Oh, no, I did not just call you the A word. No, it's just the way you're supposed to say enthusiast. I'm Gina, and that's Bob, Engineer Bob. That's his voice that you hear in our theme music. And Marie, well, Marie still claims that those key words are important. Lately, you've heard a story about a fly, and then you heard a story about a cat, but today it is all about a murder. And it's from, arguably, the world's most renowned murder mystery author, Agatha Christie. You can find quite a few of her short stories on Fast Asleep. We know you love them because you let us know. Thank you. Now, let's think. What have we learned on this podcast about Agatha? Well, here's a quick review. Let's start by saying she wrote 66 detective novels, 14 short story collections, and 22 plays. It's said that Edgar Allan Poe invented the detective story. But Agatha Christie is known as the Queen of Crime, the Queen of Mystery. She wrote her first detective story 33 years after Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and she followed all his rules for these tales, but she improved upon them. She published between 1920 and 1976 in 45 different languages and sold more than 2 billion copies. 1890 was the year of Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller's birth. She grew up in a large house in a seaside town of Devon, England. She had one sister and one brother, but they were both more than a decade older than she. Ooh, that sounds like me. She did not attend school, but taught herself, like Ray Bradbury, from books. All this made her exceptionally shy, even as an adult. She had many imaginary friends, though, and a great fascination with funerals. Don't feel too badly for her. At age 24, she married the very handsome member of the Royal Flying Corps, Archie Christie. He was immediately sent off to France, though. World War I had just begun. He made it through, unharmed. He and Agatha Christie had one child, Rosalind, before Mrs. Christie settled into her very lucrative writing career. It was later when Mr. Christie fell in love with a friend of the family and asked for a divorce. Agatha mysteriously disappeared, setting off a large manhunt. And why did she do it? Amnesia? A play for the return of Archie's affections? Or was it just a clever way to boost sales of her books? Oh, it did make her a very well-known celebrity. Pretty awesome chick, right? All right. Published in 1928. Tuck in, everybody, for the delightful Miss Marple in Agatha Christie's The Thumb Mark of St. Peter. And now, Aunt Jane, it is up to you, said Raymond West. Yes, Aunt Jane, we are expecting something really spicy, chimed in Joyce Lempriere. Now, you are laughing at me, my dears, said Miss Marple, placidly. You think that Because I have lived in this out-of-the-way spot all of my life, I am not likely to have had any very interesting experiences. Oh, God forbid that I should ever regard village life as peaceful and uneventful, said Raymond with fervor. Not after the horrible revelations we have heard from you. The cosmopolitan world seems a mild and peaceful place compared with St. Mary Mead. Well, my dear, said Miss Marple, human nature is much the same everywhere, and of course one has opportunities of observing it at close quarters in a village. You really are unique, Aunt Jane, cried Joyce. I hope you don't mind me calling you Aunt Jane, she added. I don't know why I do it. Don't you, my dear? Said Miss Marple. She looked up for a moment or two with something quizzical in her glance, which made the blood flame to the girl's cheeks. Raymond West fidgeted and cleared his throat in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Miss Marple looked at them both and smiled again and bent her attention once more to her knitting. It is true, of course, that I have lived what is called a very uneventful life, but I have had a lot of experience in solving different little problems that have arisen. Oh, some of them have been really quite ingenious, but it would be no good telling them to you because they are about such unimportant things that you would not be interested. Just things like who cut the meshes of Mrs. Jones' string bag and why Mrs. Sims only wore her new fur coat once. Very interesting things, really, to any student of human nature. No, the only experience I can remember that would be of interest to you is the one about my poor niece Mabel's husband. It is about 10 or 15 years ago now, and happily it is all over and done with, and everyone has forgotten about it. People's memories are very short. A lucky thing, I always think. Miss Marple paused and murmured to herself, "Oh, I must just count this row. The decreasing is a little awkward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 3. Pearl, that is right. Now, what was I saying? Oh, yes, about poor Mabel. Mabel was my niece. A nice girl, really, a very nice girl, but just a trifle what one might call silly. Rather fond of being melodramatic and saying a great deal more than she meant whenever she was upset. She married a Mr. Denman when she was 22, and I am afraid it was not a very happy marriage. I had hoped very much that the attachment would not come to anything, for Mr. Denman was a man of very violent temper, not the kind of man who would be patient with Mabel's foibles. And I also learned that there was insanity in his family. However, girls were just as obstinate then as they are now, and as they always will be, and Mabel married him. I didn't see her much after her marriage. She came to stay with me once or twice, and they asked me there several times, but as a matter of fact, I am not very fond of staying in other people's houses, and I always managed to make some excuse. They had been married 10 years when Mr. Denman died suddenly. There were no children, and he left all his money to Mabel. I wrote, of course, and offered to come to Mabel if she wanted me, but she wrote back a very sensible letter, and I gathered that she was not altogether overwhelmed by grief. Well, I thought that was only natural, because I knew they had not been getting on together for some time. It was not until about 3 months afterward that I got a most hysterical letter from Mabel begging me to come to her, and saying that things were going from bad to worse, and she couldn't stand it much longer. Well, so, of course, continued Miss Marple, I put Clara on board wages, and sent the plate and the King Charles tankard to the bank, and I went off at once. I found Mabel in a very nervous state. The house, Myrtle Dean, was a fairly large one, very comfortably furnished. There was a cook and a house parlor maid, as well as a nurse attendant to look after old Mr. Denman, Mabel's husband's father, who was what is called not quite right in the head. Quite peaceful and well-behaved, but distinctly odd at times. As I say, there was insanity in the family. I was really shocked to see the change in Mabel. Well, she was a mass of nerves, twitching all over. Yet I had the greatest difficulty in making her tell me what the trouble was. I got at it, as one always does get at these things, indirectly. I asked her about some friends of hers she was always mentioning in her letters, the Gallaghers. She said, to my surprise, that she hardly ever saw them nowadays. Other friends whom I mentioned elicited the same remark. I spoke to her then of the folly of shutting herself up and brooding, and especially of the silliness of cutting herself adrift from her friends. And then she came bursting out with the truth. It is not my doing. It is theirs. There is not a soul in the place who will speak to me now. When I go down the high street, they all get out of the way so that they shan't have to meet me or speak to me. I am like a kind of leper. It is awful, and I can't bear it any longer. I shall have to sell the house and go abroad. Yet why should I be driven away from a home like this? I have done nothing. I was more disturbed than I can tell you. I was knitting a comforter for old Mrs. Hay at the time, and in my perturbation I dropped 2 stitches and never discovered it until long after. My dear Mabel, I said, you amaze me. But what is the cause of all this? Even as a child, Mabel was always difficult. I had the greatest difficulty in getting her to give me a straightforward answer to my question. She would only say vague things about wicked talk and idle people who had nothing better to do than gossip, and people who put ideas into other people's heads. Well, that is all quite clear to me, I said. There is evidently some story being circulated about you, but what that story is, you must know as well as anyone, and you are going to tell me. It is so wicked, moaned Mabel. Well, of course it is wicked, I said briskly. There is nothing that you can tell me about people's minds that would astonish or surprise me. Now, Mabel, will you tell me in plain English what people are saying about you? And then it all came out. It seemed that Geoffrey Denman's death being quite sudden and unexpected, gave rise to various rumors. In fact, and in plain English, as I had put it to her, people were saying that she had poisoned her husband. Now, as I expect you know, there is nothing more cruel than talk, and there is nothing more difficult to combat. When people say things behind your back, there is nothing you can refute or deny, and the rumors go on growing and growing, and no one can stop them. I was quite certain of one thing. Mabel was quite incapable of poisoning anyone, and I didn't see why life should be ruined for her and her home made unbearable just because, in all probability, she had been doing something silly and foolish. "There is no smoke without fire," I said. "Now, Mabel, you have got to tell me what started people off on this tack. There must have been something." Mabel was very incoherent and declared there was nothing at all, except, of course, that Geoffrey's death had been very sudden. He had seemed quite well at supper that evening, and had taken violently ill in the night. The doctor had been sent for, but the poor man had died a few minutes after the doctor's arrival. Death had been thought to be the result of eating poisoned mushrooms. "Well," I said, "I suppose a sudden death of that kind might start tongues wagging, but surely not without some additional facts. Did you have a quarrel with Geoffrey or anything of that kind?" She admitted that she had had a quarrel with him on the preceding morning at breakfast time. "And the servants heard it, I suppose?" I asked. "Oh, they weren't in the room." "No, my dear," I said, "but they probably were fairly near the door outside." Oh, and I knew the carrying power of Mabel's high-pitched, hysterical voice only too well. Geoffrey Denman, too, was a man given to raising his voice loudly when angry. "What did you quarrel about?" I asked. "Oh, the usual things. It was always the same things over and over again. Some little thing would start us off, and then Geoffrey became impossible and said abominable things. I told him what I thought of him." "There had been a lot of quarreling then?" I asked. "Well, it wasn't my fault." "My dear child," I said, "it doesn't matter whose fault it was. That is not what we are discussing. In a place like this, everybody's private affairs are more or less public property. You and your husband were always quarreling. You had a particularly bad quarrel one morning, and that night your husband died suddenly and mysteriously. Is that all? Or is there anything else?" "Well, I don't know what you mean by anything else," said Mabel sullenly. "Just what I say, my dear. If you have done anything silly, don't, for heaven's sake, keep it back now. I only want to do what I can to help you." Stay with me. I'll be right back. If you have done anything silly, don't, for heaven's sake, keep it back now. I only want to do what I can to help you." "Nothing, and nobody can help me," said Mabel wildly, "except death." "Oh, have a little more faith in Providence, dear," I said. "Now then, Mabel, I know perfectly well there is something else that you are keeping back. I always did know, even when she was a child, when she was not telling me the whole truth. It took a long time, but I got it out at last. She had gone down to the chemist's that morning and had bought some arsenic. She had, of course, to sign the book for it. Naturally, the chemist had talked. "Who is your doctor?" I asked. "Dr. Rawlinson." I knew him by sight. Mabel had pointed him out to me the other day. To put it in perfectly plain language, he was what I would describe as an old dodderer. I have had too much experience of life to believe in the infallibility of doctors. Some of them are clever men, and some of them are not. And half the time the best of them don't know what is the matter with you. I have no truck with doctors and their medicines myself. Well, I thought things over, and then I put my bonnet on and went to call on Dr. Rawlinson. Oh, he was just what I thought of him, a nice old man, kindly, vague, and so short-sighted as to be pitiful, slightly deaf, and withal touchy and sensitive to the last degree. Oh, he was on his high horse at once when I mentioned Geoffrey Denman's death. Talked for a long time about various kinds of fungi, edible and otherwise. He had questioned the cook, and she had admitted that one or two of the mushrooms cooked had been a little queer, but as the shop had sent them, she thought they must be all right. The more she had thought about them since, the more she was convinced that their appearance was unusual. "Oh, she would be," I said. "They would start by being quite like mushrooms in appearance, and they would end by being orange with purple spots. There is nothing that she cannot remember if she tries." I gathered that Denman had been past speech when the doctor got to him. He was incapable of swallowing and had died within a few minutes. The doctor seemed perfectly satisfied with the certificate he had given, but how much of that was obstinacy, and how much of it was genuine belief? I could not be sure. I went straight home, and I asked Mabel quite frankly why she had bought arsenic. "You must have had some idea in your mind," I pointed out. Mabel burst into tears. "Oh, I wanted to make away with myself," she moaned. "I was too unhappy. I thought I would end it all." "Have you the arsenic still?" I asked. "No, I threw it away." I sat there turning things over and over in my mind. "Well, what happened when he was taken ill? Did he call you?" "No," she shook her head. "He rang the bell violently. He must have rung it several times. At last, Dorothy, the house parlor maid, heard it, and she waked the cook up, and they came down. When Dorothy saw him, oh, she was frightened. He was rambling and delirious. She left the cook with him and came rushing to me. Oh, I got up and went to him. Of course, I saw at once he was dreadfully ill. Unfortunately, Brewster, who looks after old Mr. Denman, was away for the night, so there was no one who knew what to do. I sent Dorothy off for the doctor, and Cook and I stayed with him, but after a few minutes, I couldn't bear it any longer. It was too dreadful. I ran away back to my room and locked the door. Oh, very selfish and unkind of you, I said, and no doubt that conduct of yours has done nothing to help you since. You may be sure of that. Cook will have repeated it everywhere. Well. This is a bad business. Next, I spoke to the servants. The cook wanted to tell me about the mushrooms, but I stopped her. I was tired of these mushrooms. Instead, I questioned both of them very closely about their master's condition on that night. Oh, they both agreed that he seemed to be in great agony, that he was unable to swallow, and he could only speak in a strangled voice. And when he did speak, it was only rambling, nothing sensible. Well, what did he say when he was rambling? I asked, curiously. Something about some fish, wasn't it? Turning to the other, and Dorothy agreed. A heap of fish, she said. Some nonsense like that. I could see at once he wasn't in his right mind. Oh, poor gentleman. There didn't seem to be any sense to be made out of that. As a last resource, I went up to see Brewster, who was a gaunt middle-aged woman of about 50. Well, it is a pity that I wasn't here that night, she said. Nobody seems to have tried to do anything for him until the doctor came. I suppose he was delirious, I said doubtfully, but that is not a symptom of ptomaine poisoning, is it? It depends, said Brewster. I asked her how her patient was getting on. She shook her head. Oh, he is pretty bad, she said. Weak? Oh, no. He is strong enough physically. All but his eyesight. That is failing badly. Oh, he may outlive all of us, but his mind is failing very fast. Now, I've already told both Mr. and Mrs. Denman that he ought to be in an institution. But Mrs. Denman wouldn't hear of it at any price. I will say for Maple that she always had a kindly heart. Well, there the thing was. I thought it over in every aspect, and at last I decided that there was only one thing to be done. In view of the rumors that were going about, permission must be applied for to exhume the body, and a proper post-mortem must be made, and lying tongues quietened once and for all. Mabel, of course, made a fuss, mostly on sentimental grounds, disturbing the dead man in his peaceful grave, etc., etc., but I was firm. Now, I won't make a long story of this part of it. We got the order, and they did the autopsy, or whatever they call it, but the result was not so satisfactory as it might have been. Oh, there was no trace of arsenic, and that was all to the good. But the actual words of the report were that there was nothing to show by what means the deceased had come to his death. So you see, that didn't lead us out of trouble altogether. People went on talking about rare poisons impossible to detect and rubbish of that sort. I had seen the pathologist who had done the post-mortem, and I had asked him several questions, though he tried his best to get out of answering most of them, but I got out of him that he considered it highly unlikely that the poisoned mushrooms were the cause of death. An idea was simmering in my mind, and I asked him what poison, if any, could have been employed to obtain that result. Now, he made a long explanation to me, most of which I must admit I did not follow, but it amounted to this: that death might have been due to some strong vegetable alkaloid. The idea I had was this: supposing the taint of insanity was in Geoffrey Denman's blood also, might he not have made away with himself? He had at one period of his life studied medicine, and he would have a good knowledge of poisons and their effects. I didn't think it sounded very likely, but it was the only thing I could think of, and I was nearly at my wits' end, I can tell you. Now, I dare say you modern young people will laugh, but when I am in really bad trouble, I always say a little prayer to myself. Anywhere, when I am walking along the street or at a bazaar, and I always get an answer. Oh, it may be some trifling thing, apparently quite unconnected with the subject, but there it is. I had that text pinned over my bed when I was a little girl. Ask, and you shall receive. On the morning that I'm telling you about, I was walking along the high street, and I was praying hard. I shut my eyes, and when I opened them, what do you think was the first thing that I saw? 5 faces with varying degrees of interest were turned to Miss Marple. It may be safely assumed, however, that no one would have guessed the answer to the question right. I saw, said Miss Marple impressively, the window of the fishmonger's shop. There was only one thing in it: a fresh haddock. She looked round triumphantly. Oh, my God, said Raymond West. An answer to prayer, a fresh haddock. Yes, Raymond, said Miss Marple severely, and there is no need to be profane about it. The hand of God is everywhere. The first thing I saw were the black spots, the marks of St. Peter's thumb. That is the legend, you know, St. Peter's thumb. And that brought things home to me. I needed faith, the ever-true faith of St. Peter. I connected the two things together, faith and fish. Sir Henry blew his nose rather hurriedly, and Joyce bit her lip. Now, what did that bring to my mind? Of course, both the cook and the house parlor maid mentioned fish as being one of the things spoken of by the dying man. I was convinced, absolutely convinced, that there was some solution of the mystery to be found in these words. I went home determined to get to the bottom of the matter. She paused. Has it ever occurred to you, the old lady went on, how much we go by what is called, I believe, the context? There is a place on Dartmoor called Grey Weathers. If you were talking to a farmer there and mentioned Grey Weathers, he would probably conclude that you were speaking of these stone circles. Yet it is possible that you might be speaking of the atmosphere. And in the same way, if you were meaning the stone circles, an outsider hearing a fragment of the conversation might think you meant the weather. So, when we repeat a conversation, we don't, as a rule, repeat the actual words. We put in some other words that seemed to us to mean exactly the same thing. I saw both the cook and Dorothy separately. I asked the cook if she was quite sure that her master had really mentioned a heap of fish. She said she was quite sure. Were these his exact words? I asked. Or did he mention some particular kind of fish? Oh, that's it, said the cook. It was some particular kind of fish, but I can't remember what now. A heap of, now what was it? Oh, not any of the fish you sent to table. Would it have been perch or pike? No, it didn't begin with a P. Dorothy also recalled that her master had mentioned some special kind of fish. Some outlandish kind of fish it was, she said. A pile of, oh dear, now, what was it? Did he say heap or pile? I asked. Oh, I think he said pile, but there, I really can't be sure. It's so hard to remember the actual words, isn't it, miss? Especially when they don't seem to make sense. But now I come to think of it, I am pretty sure that it was a pile, and the fish began with a C. But it wasn't a cod or a crayfish. The next part is where I am really proud of myself, said Miss Marple. Because, of course, I don't know anything about drugs. Nasty, dangerous things, I call them. I have got an old recipe of my grandmother's for tansy tea that is worth any amount of your drugs. But I knew that there were several medical volumes in the house, and in one of them there was an index of drugs. You see, my idea was that Geoffrey had taken some particular poison and was trying to say the name of it. Well, I looked down the list of H's beginning H-E. Nothing there that sounded likely, and then I began on the P's, and almost at once I came to... What do you think? She looked round, postponing her moment of triumph. Pilocarpine! Can't you understand a man who could hardly speak trying to drag that word out? And what would that sound like to a cook who had never heard the word? Wouldn't it convey the impression of pile of carp? By Jove, said Sir Henry. Oh, I should never have hit upon that, said Dr. Pender. Most interesting, said Mr. Petherick. Really, most interesting. I turned quickly to the page indicated in the index. I read about pilocarpine and its effect on the eyes, and other things that didn't seem to have any bearing on the case, but at last I came to a most significant phrase. Has been tried with success as an antidote for atropine poisoning. I can tell you, the light that dawned upon me then. I never had thought it likely that Geoffrey Denman would commit suicide. No, this new solution was not only possible, but I was absolutely sure it was the correct one, because all the pieces fitted in logically. I am not going to try to guess, said Raymond. Go on, Aunt Jane, and tell us what was so startlingly clear to you. Well, I don't know anything about medicine, of course, said Miss Marple, but I did happen to know this, that when my eyesight was failing, the doctor ordered me drops with atropine sulfate in them. I went straight upstairs to old Mr. Denman's room. I didn't beat about the bush. Mr. Denman, I said, I know everything. Why did you poison your son? He looked at me for a minute or two. Rather a handsome old man he was in his way. And then he burst out laughing. It was one of the most vicious laughs I have ever heard. I can assure you, it made my flesh creep. I had only heard anything like it once before, when poor Mrs. Jones went off her head. Yes, he said, I got even with Geoffrey. I was too clever for Geoffrey. He was going to put me away, was he? Have me shut up in an asylum? I heard them talking about it. Mabel is a good girl. Mabel stuck up for me. But I knew she wouldn't be able to stand up against Geoffrey. In the end, he would have his own way. He always did. But I settled him. I settled my kind, loving son. I crept down in the night. It was quite easy. Brewster was away. My dear son was asleep. He had a glass of water by the side of his bed. Oh, he always woke up in the middle of the night and drank it off. I poured it away. And I emptied the bottle of eye drops into the glass. He would wake up and swill it down before he knew what it was. There was only a tablespoon of it. Quite enough. Quite enough. And so he did. They came to me in the morning and broke it to me, very gently. They were afraid it would upset me. Well, said Miss Marple, that is the end of the story. Of course, the poor old man was put in an asylum. He wasn't really responsible for what he had done, and the truth was known, and everyone was sorry for Mabel, and could not do enough to make up to her for the unjust suspicions they had had. But if it hadn't been for Geoffrey realizing what the stuff was he had swallowed, and trying to get everybody to get hold of the antidote without delay, it might never have been found out. I believe there are very definite symptoms with atropine, dilated pupils of the eyes and all that, but, of course, as I have said, Dr. Rawlinson was very short-sighted. Poor old man. And in the same medical book which I went on reading, some of it was most interesting, it gave the symptoms of ptomaine poisoning and atropine. And they are not unlike. But I can assure you, I have never seen a pile of fresh haddock without thinking of the thumb mark of St. Peter. There was a very long pause. My dear friend, said Mr. Petherick, my very dear friend, you really are amazing. I shall recommend Scotland Yard to come to you for advice, said Sir Henry. Well, at all events, Aunt Jane, said Raymond, there is one thing that you don't know. Oh, yes, I do, dear, said Miss Marple. It happened just before dinner, didn't it? When you took Joyce out to admire the sunset. It is a very favorite place, that. There, by the jasmine hedge. That is where the milkman asked Annie if he could put up the banns."
"Dash it all, Aunt Jane," said Raymond. "Don't spoil all the romance. Joyce and I aren't like the milkman and Annie."
"Oh, that is where you make a mistake, dear," said Miss Marple. "Everybody's very much alike, really. But fortunately, perhaps, they don't realize it." Introduction information for this episode is from an article by Joan Acachella for The New Yorker entitled "Queen of Crime," and other information in our show notes. Reach us here, won't you? In comments, or email us at fastasleepwithginamarie44@gmail.com. You can also reach us on Instagram, Facebook, and maybe even TikTok. Oh, those reviews and likes and comments are so important to us. And those subscriptions, they keep us here for you. Thank you so very much for listening each week. Keyword: haddock. And next week, something from Stanley Ellen. Good night.